And here's the thing. I don't want to be an I told you so guy, but I told you. I told you early on that it was going to take a minute for everybody on the ice to understand what Lane Hutson's tendencies are. When he shimmies, when he jukes here, jukes there, what is he likely going to do next? And it's going to take reps for his teammates. Forget about his defensive partner. The guys on the ice when 48 is out there, it's going to take a minute to figure this out. And I think we're starting to see a semblance of just that. David Savard getting a clearer idea of what 48 is more likely to do on an average when he moves to the left or fakes to the right and goes left and breaks to the left, right? And we're starting to see a little bit more of that comfortable aspect of David Savard and Lane Hutson coming together. So I think we're starting to get an idea of Lane Hutson's style, his partners, educated on what 48 does when he's out there. And how much fun was that on Monday night? Yes, Connor McDavid turnstiling Cole Caulfield in the first. Connor McDavid looks like a video game player when you put the speed burst on. I mean, it's crazy. And he does this to NHL players. Sometimes I have to remind my friends that aren't into the weeds in sports in the NHL like I am, that Connor McDavid dummies those guys. And those guys are in the NHL. They're in the league, and he makes them look like Pee-wee players that got an emergency call-up. It's crazy, the separation, how awesome he is to watch. And you know what? Lane Hutson's power bursts and his ability to go from one end of the rink all the way to the other. Wow, he is fun to watch. Another full-stop, price of admission player. And if you were at the game on Monday night, good on you. You're lucky. That was an awesome game to go to. You got to see McDavid. You got to see Draisaitl. You got to see a very classy tribute to a classy man named Pierre Hood, who's the voice of the Montreal Canadiens in French for RDS and has been forever. And he was finally enshrined into the Hockey Hall of Fame last week, getting the Foster Hewitt Award. And he was honored in such a classy way. The Montreal Canadiens do a lot of things, but they do a lot of things right. And that is paying tribute to those that have worked under the Canadiens umbrella for a lifetime and mean a lot to the fan base. And the Montreal Canadiens, I think, are very good at recognizing stuff like that. Even, people who pass away, they do a good job of respecting, and because the fans do. And so that was a very classy gesture. I wanted to make sure I got that in. So yes, it's nice to see that the Montreal Canadiens are more organized. They're tighter. There's fewer passengers. And, every now and again, the Canadiens looks like they dodged a bullet last night, didn't they, when Caden Gooley blocked a shot from Evan Bouchard of the Edmonton Oilers and then left. And that was cause for concern on a layered way, because not only is Gooley injury prone, it's when he blocked the shot and how quickly he got off the ice and went back to the dressing room, like in a hurried up way, went through the tunnel. And right away you're thinking, okay, it's Caden Gooley. Gets hurt, and when he does get hurt, he's on the shelf for a minute. And then it was the way the RDS broadcasters, Pierrot and Mark Denis, were like, oh my God, this is devastating. This is borderline worst case scenario. And then he doesn't come back. And then you see him on the bench in the second period. The guy's overdosing on smelling salts. He's going for a stretch to see how it all works. And presto, he scores a goal in a nice back and forth exchange to get the second goal of the night for the Montreal Canadiens en route to their 3-0 win over Edmonton, Sam Montembeault's second shutout of the year. So bullet dodge, and dare I say, the Montreal Canadiens put their injury misery behind them. Now, again, it's 19 games. The Canes have played 19 games. We are not at the quarter pole of an 82-game season yet, but we can't, over the course of the first 12 games, take a massive dump on the Montreal Canadiens and say this, that, the coach needs to be fired, doesn't have experience, trade this guy, trade that guy. Is Nick Suzuki worth the money? Is Cole Caulfield the new version of Brian Savage? They're discombobulated in their own end. All that negative stuff. If we're going to point all of that out, and fairly, it's also fair of us to look at how the Montreal Canadiens are traveling down this rebuilding path, how they're developing, and who is bought in. And so I feel pretty good. About what I've seen, the opinions I've shared. I've mentioned several times, I think I'm consistent. I am a Martin St. Louis guy. And there was a moment, I don't know if you caught this, but there was a moment in his press conference after Monday's result when he asked about, was this the first time we've won back-to-back? And he talked about, hey, we're doing all right now, but he wasn't exactly sure. He wasn't sure, and I believe him. And you know what that tells me? When Martin St. Louis had to ask the media that gathered after the 3-0 win Monday, is this our first 2-game winning streak of the season? This man is more dead set and hyper-focused on the real fine details as opposed to the bigger picture of wins and losses and points accumulated in a season. That's what that tells me. Hit me up in the comments if you see that any differently. And also comment on, are you pleased with the progress? Do you believe that the Montreal Canadiens have shown some evidence that they have fixed some of the major issues that stalled them out of the gate? The Canadiens are 3-1 in their last 4 games. Now, as I mentioned, and I'll reiterate here again, it's a small sample size. It's 19 games, but there is a lot of forward progression. So, the Canadiens, I believe, have done a great job of fixing a lot of their major issues, spending less time in their own end, getting out of their own end, not getting trapped in the neutral zone and having to recover from mistakes and again. And so we're going to see what type of roster manipulation Ken Hughes has up his sleeve. And let's talk about Lucas Konda for a second, who it was cool to see that Paul Coffey, the assistant coach with the Edmonton Oilers, saw Lucas Konda and said, hey, what are you doing? Because they shared some time. Coffey was Konda's coach when he was playing in Ontario, and Coffey had no idea that Konda was called up and now playing in the NHL with Montreal. So they caught up and shared some stuff, and Coffey had mentioned that the Canadiens are lucky to have this guy because he's a hard-working player, and it made me laugh, right? Because guys like Lucas Konda and players like him that are going to occupy a bottom 3 role from a forward position in the top 4 lines, right? That they have to work hard, because if they don't work hard, they don't get to play. It reminds me of Steve Beje a lifetime ago in the Montreal Canadiens. And this man, he would throw his body through a brick wall if that's what his team needed him to do. And I loved Steve Beje's work ethic. Like, it was admirable. I respected Steve Beje's game. And I would come in to work. This is the early days of my broadcasting career with, then it was called the Team 990 radio station. And I come in, it's like, look at this guy, so hardworking, all this stuff. And my colleague at the time would look at me, he goes, Sean, if Beje doesn't play balls to the wall, he doesn't play. And so I kind of have that in my memory about players like that, role players, depth players, have to bring it every single night. Otherwise, you're on an energy line or a shutdown line for a reason. You work hard, you're relentless, you're a pit bull, yada, yada, yada. And if you don't do those things, you don't get to play. So Lucas Konda acting like a pro, doing the right things, scoring his second NHL goal the other night. But ultimately, Raphael Harvey-Pinard is coming, and he's healthy, and he's practicing, and he's going to be the next guy. And it's going to be Lucas Konda that's going to be sent back down to the Laval Rocket, and that is okay. But the more important thing here is, and I'm not here to say that Raphael Harvey-Pinard is going to cure what ails the Montreal Canadiens from a forward perspective. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is Lucas Konda and his sample size, I believe, is good enough to show the Montreal Canadiens that if they need a forward with grit, they need a forward with edge. That's the guy you can call up, because sometimes he can stir the pot, make things happen. And yeah, I don't know if he's going to score goals somewhat regularly, but he showed that at least he can here. So that's kind of what's coming in the here and now for the Montreal Canadiens, which takes us to the great news we all got on Monday. And that is Patrik Laine skating and practicing hard with Canadiens coach Adam Nicholas. And you can head over to rds.ca. I'm sure you can search Patrik Laine skating in your social media search bar, and you will see 92 out there on Monday doing some great edge work, digging in, doing transitions, power moves, power shots, and getting closer. So that's where we are in the aftermath of the Montreal Canadiens going 3-1 in their last 4, shutting down the Edmonton Oilers in a 3-0 final at the Bell Center on Monday. Weird week. Montreal played Monday night. then they're off the rest of the week. They're not back in action. They don't take live game fire until Saturday night, when the Vegas Golden Knights roll up to the Bell Center. So I'm optimistic. I'm not optimistic to the point where playoffs. I'm not optimistic to that point where we're talking playoffs, but I am optimistic that the Montreal Canadiens have shown us that they have the capabilities, they have the right coach, they have the right players, and the foundation is a strong one. Nick Suzuki, Cole Caulfield, Caden Gooley, and then the next wave of players that is ready to come up, whether it's Joshua Roy, Ivan Demidov, Michael Hage, Jacob Fowler in goal, David Reinbacher on defense, Juraj Slafkovsky trying to get better and figure it out himself. I believe the pieces are starting to look better on the chessboard. Now we're getting closer to talking about power moves. We're not there yet, but I do believe we are getting closer.